Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents When Anger Hurts, Quieting the Storm Within, 2nd edition. By Matthew McKay, Ph.D., Peter D. Rogers, Ph.D., and Judith McKay, R.N. Narrated by Emmanuel Chumaceiro. Publisher's note: this audiobook includes bonus material, including checklists and worksheets. Please visit Tantor.com and type "When Anger Hurts" into the search box. Follow the link to the book's page. Then, under the Supplemental Content section, please enter the access code HEALING, and then click the Unlock button to access the bonus material. The code should be entered in all lowercase letters. This publication is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information in regard to the subject matter covered. It is sold with the understanding that the publisher is not engaged in rendering psychological, financial, legal, or other professional services. If expert assistance or counseling is needed, the services of a competent professional should be sought. Preface to the 2nd edition. By now, When Anger Hurts has sold 250,000 copies. It's used all over the world in clinics, as well as anger management groups and classes. Hundreds of therapists regularly recommend it to clients, and thousands of readers have found and bought it, hoping to change their lives. In the 14 years since the book originally appeared, we've gotten a great deal of feedback, and we are honored that our book has proven useful to so many. But since it was introduced, many things in our field have changed. Research, particularly the work of Jerry Deffenbacher, has pointed the way to more effective treatment protocols. So we have put them in this book, adding new chapters on 24-hour anger management, anger inoculation, problem solving, assessing the cost of your anger, and road rage. There have also been major changes made to the chapters on anger and children, controlling stress step by step, and coping through healthy self-talk. And there have been deletions, notably the chapter on thought stopping that recent research has shown to be a questionable technique. We believe this extensively revised 2nd edition will give you an opportunity to learn the crucial skills you must have to change your life. Everything you need is here to alter even lifelong patterns of anger and reactivity. To the therapists and clinicians who've used the 1st edition, we wish to express our thanks, and we offer the promise that the 2nd edition will be even more effective, more helpful. To those who are just discovering When Anger Hurts, we invite you to make a commitment to change by making the commitment to work your way through each step of this program. It is true that doing the exercises will take time and energy, but your reward in the coin of stronger, healthier, more loving relationships will be more than worth it. Matthew McKay, Ph.D., Nance's Hot Springs, Calistoga, California. 1. How to use this book. Anger has enormous costs. The impulse that felt so right at the moment, so justified, becomes in the quiet hours another source of guilt and regret. What seemed so worthy of blame passes. What remains are the scars, the hurt, and the alienation. If you are often angry, every one of your relationships may be affected. Marriage can become a minefield. Distance grows. Walls thicken. Children may become hardened, resistant, while carrying deep feelings of worthlessness. Coworkers may withdraw or sabotage you. Bosses become critical. A bitterness may grow with certain friends, and anger affects your health. A 25-year follow-up study of law students who had taken a test measuring hostility revealed a startling fact. 20% of those who had scored in the top quarter on the hostility scale had died, compared to a death rate of only 5% for students who had scored in the lowest quarter of the same test. Frequent anger is damaging to your body and increases the death rate from nearly every cause. When Anger Hurts. This book is for people who are concerned about their anger, who've grown tired of the emotional and physical toll that anger takes. It's for those who want less anger in their relationships, who seek better ways of expressing needs and solving problems. This is a self-help book, which means that you are in for a lot of work. You can't achieve anger control without learning and practicing crucial coping skills. A passive reading of the text will prove disappointing. Nothing will change in your life. A real change in your experience and expression of anger can be achieved only by doing the exercises, trying the techniques, and practicing your new skills on a daily basis. Whether you are learning stress reduction or a system to alter your anger-triggering thoughts, the book can help only if you master each step and then apply what you've learned to real events in your life. The work will pay off. The skills you'll learn in this book can help you achieve these important benefits. 1. The ability to control destructive anger venting, and the chance to protect and rebuild relationships that have been damaged by venting in the past. 2. A reduction in the frequency and intensity of your psychological anger response. There is a wealth of scientific data that anger damages your health. See Chapter 3. The less anger you experience, the longer you live. 3. A change in the beliefs, assumptions, and attitudes that trigger chronic anger. As you learn to restructure anger-triggering thoughts, you'll find that fewer and fewer things upset you. 4. Identification of the stresses and needs that lie below your anger. When you're clear about the real problem, you can move past anger to decision-making. 5. The ability to cope effectively with your stress. Instead of exploding when stress exceeds your tolerance threshold, you can employ specific relaxation tools. 6. Greater effectiveness in meeting your needs. Anger generates resistance and resentment in others. You may get short-term cooperation, but in the long run, your needs will be ignored and you will be avoided. Problem-solving and communication tools can help you get what you want without anger. When anger helps, despite its costs, anger can be adaptive. It's a warning signal that something is wrong. Just as physical pain can be a warning, this stove is hot, move your hand right now. Anger can warn you of the imminent trauma. Anger can provide the energy to resist emotional or physical threats. The following exceptional situations are examples of when anger helps. 1. Perhaps the most obvious situation in which anger can be helpful is that of physical threat or actual attack. Anger can mobilize you to defend yourself or escape. A few years ago, Iris, a middle-aged woman living in New York, heard footsteps following her as she was returning home alone from the theater. She was frightened, of course, but then she became angry at the thought of being victimized. She slowed down. Then, when the footsteps came near, she whirled around and shouted at the top of her voice, "Get away from me, you son of a bitch, or I'll kill you!" The would-be attacker fled. 2. Anger can be adaptive when your boundaries are violated. This type of infringement can take a variety of forms. At work, Sally's boss often asked her to bring home coffee. Although food service is not part of her job description, Jim's boss expects him to put in hours of unpaid overtime each day. A personal boundary can be violated by relatives or friends who drop in without calling, by a neighbor who constantly borrows tools, or by a lover who demands a kind of sexuality you find repulsive. Anger can help you mobilize your resources to set appropriate limits. You don't need to get hostile or aggressive with your boss, but you can learn to be very assertive. In your personal life, anger can help you set limits and give you the strength to resist threatening demands. 3. Many people struggle with the task of separation and individuation. Some children live most of their lives in the shadow of intrusive or abusive parents, and even when the child thinks she's escaped by marrying and having her own family, the intrusiveness continues. Penny is a case in point. When she and her husband and newborn baby moved to the other coast, they thought they had bought a measure of independence. Not so. Weekly telephone calls full of interrogation and criticism were followed by overlong visits where Penny's mother completely took over. Finally, Penny, supported by her husband, took the risk and confronted her mother. She didn't yell and scream, but her controlled anger allowed her to communicate the intensity of her need to raise her child her way. Penny's mother felt hurt and angry, but eventually she learned to appreciate her daughter as an individual. Adolescence is a trying and troubled time for all concerned. Richard was a fairly good boy. When he got to high school, he started using the nickname Gandhi, short for Gandalf, and his parents noticed a change. He began to have and voice opinions. He was openly critical of the president and made disparaging remarks about capitalism. When his Republican parents objected to these new political views, his first response was sullen withdrawal. After a while, his anger energized him to take bolder action. He told his parents off. "I have a right to my own beliefs. Lay off, or you'll have a war right here in your own house." His parents were shocked, but decided to give him more space. Chris and Sandy met and fell in love. After a whirlwind courtship, they moved in together. It was wine and roses for a couple of weeks, but soon Chris began to feel trapped. Sandy kept demanding more and more attention until Chris felt drained. In the end, Sandy was following him around like a lost puppy. This was the last straw. Fully experiencing his anger enabled Chris to set firm limits. Eventually, the couple had to separate entirely. However nourishing it had been at first, the relationship was stifling both of their lives and not allowing them to grow. 4. One of the most difficult problems to deal with is sexual or physical abuse as a child. Sexual molestation, whether by a parent, grandparent, sibling, or next-door neighbor, is a devastating experience. Equally devastating is physical or continued verbal and emotional abuse. Children who experience these kinds of maltreatment are traumatized and carry huge reservoirs of grief and anger into adulthood. For survivors of child abuse, recovery means allowing more and more of the child's buried feelings to surface. First, the pain, the humiliation, the sense of wrongness. Next comes the anger and a realization that one's innocence was violated. Finally, the deep feeling of grief. If ever the words legitimate, valid, or appropriate could be used in connection with anger, this is the best example. For victims of child abuse, catharsis in a safe therapeutic environment is an essential requirement for moving on. Getting in touch with the victimized child's anger is a major step in the recovery process. 5. Anger helps overcome the fear of asserting your needs. Many people believe they don't have a right to ask for what they want. They believe they don't deserve to be happy. Without the mobilizing effects of anger, they would simply never have the courage to communicate their needs. Cindy is a case in point. She was always being put down, even as a child. Her family's message was, "You're not important. Your sister needs braces on her teeth. She's going to be in the school play. Your teeth are okay. So what if they're a little bit crooked? We're sending your brother to college. He's the bright one. You'll get a job till you get married." There came a time when Cindy finally stood up for herself. Her anger strengthened and supported her as she confronted her parents. In a loud voice, she told them that she was finished being second best, finished with the Cinderella shit. Some things started to change. For one, her mother apologized, and her father offered to pay for books and tuition at the local community college. Using this book. Although anger can serve vital functions to protect and defend the integrity of the self, it is too frequently an instrument that destroys and abuses. Chronic anger does not make you strong and safe. It weakens you. It encourages attack. The truth is that anger begets anger. The more you shout, the more you invite shouting. The more you rage, the more you invite rage. There are two kinds of anger: anger at yourself and anger directed toward others. Anger at yourself triggers depression and damages your self-esteem. Self-directed anger is not within the scope of this book. If this is a significant issue for you, it is suggested that you read Self-Esteem for a thorough cognitive behavioral treatment of the problem. This book is focused on anger directed toward others, whether you tend to vent your feelings, anger out, or silently seethe, anger in. You will find help here. Chapters 2 through 5 contain basic information about what anger is and isn't, and what it costs you physiologically and interpersonally. Chapter 6 shows you how anger is always a choice. You can control anger by controlling your anger-triggering thoughts. Chapter 7 explores the issue of responsibility. For the angry person, someone else is always responsible for the pain. Anger control means taking responsibility for everything that stresses, hurts, or frustrates you. Chapter 8 through 17 are skill-building chapters. It's vital to apply the information in these chapters, not just read them. Do the exercises, try the techniques, find out what works best for you. Chapter 18 deals with road rage, which has become an important problem in anger management nationwide. Chapter 19 and 20 focus on the special problems of anger with children and spouse abuse. Chapter 20 has been designed to function on its own as a component of a spouse abuse treatment program. To this end, key strategies presented at length in earlier chapters are summarized in a section on anger control. For professionals, an appendix contains a protocol for leading response choice rehearsal groups. Your Anger Journal. Keeping an anger journal is a recommended part of using this book. You will be instructed at various points to observe and record specific aspects of your anger. For example, we will ask you to monitor the patterns of chronic tension in your body, your physiological anger response, and your anger-triggering thoughts. You'll track the most frequent targets of your anger. You'll notice and record the images and remembered scenes that most incite you. The journal is important because it enables you to apply the book to your specific situation. Rather than passively reading about stress, you will explore the patterns of tension in your own body. Instead of absorbing abstractions and concepts, you will learn about your own trigger thoughts and anger imagery. Coping with anger is an active process, and the time to start the process of change is now. Buy yourself a spiral notebook. Put it on your desk or bedside table, wherever you're more likely to use it. Today and every day until you've worked your way through all the chapters in this book, make the following notations. 1. The number of times you got angry in the last 24 hours. 2. How aroused you felt when you were at your angriest during the past 24 hours. Use a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is minimal arousal, and 10 is the most anger arousal you've ever felt. 3. How aggressively you acted when you were at your angriest during the last 24 hours. Again, use a 1 to 10 scale, where 1 is minimal aggression, and 10 is the most aggression you have ever displayed. A typical entry might look like this. December 4th, 4 times. Arousal, 6. Aggression, 2. December 5th, 3 times. Arousal, 7. Aggression, 5. Monitoring your anger in this way may teach you quite a lot about yourself. It will also provide you with a measure of your progress. Over the weeks, you will be able to observe yourself change both the frequency and intensity of your anger. Seeing progress documented in this way will reinforce your efforts enormously. 2. The myths of anger. Anger, Shakespeare's full hot horse, has been both praised and maligned, but mainly misunderstood. whether it is the sinew of the soul, or that which resteth in the bosom of fools. Anger has been the subject of speculation and discussion from the beginning of time. Have you ever gotten angry and had a friend reassure you that it's good to get it out? Have you been to a therapist who advised you to stop holding your anger in? Have you sometimes had the feeling that anger is inevitable, that you better find a way to let off steam before you burst? These are all common experiences, but these common sense beliefs about anger, accepted even by the mental health professionals, have turned out to be, in a word, wrong. This chapter examines the 4 basic myths of anger and describes some of the research that is now uncovering the truth. Myth 1. Anger is a biochemically determined event. Myth 2. Anger and aggression are instinctual to humans. Myth 3. Frustration leads to aggression. Myth 4. It's healthy to ventilate. Each of these myths supports the unfortunate conclusion that anger and aggression are a necessary part of being human. By suggesting that anger and aggression are determined by instinct and biology, that they are basic to human adaptation, these myths make anger seem inescapable. The end result is an era in the history of psychology during which the expression of anger has been encouraged and even praised. People are assumed to be naturally angry, and they are told that expressing their anger, letting it out, is the royal road to mental health. The truth is that anger is rarely unavoidable and seldom necessary, but that's getting ahead of the story. Right now, it will be useful to examine one by one the myths of anger. Myth 1. Anger is a biochemically determined event. It is a common belief, many held by the biomedical community, that anger is largely a biochemical process. Specifically, anger is thought to be the result of hormonal changes or activity in the limbic system, e.g., the hypothalamus and amygdala. Anger and hormones. Some researchers have linked the hormone prolactin, which stimulates the production of mother's milk, to high levels of anger. Kellner and others found that women with hyperprolactinemic amenorrhea, a condition characterized by increased levels of prolactin in the blood and absence of menstrual periods, had higher hostility scores than women with normal prolactin levels. When hyperprolactinemic women were given a prolactin-lowering drug, a significant and progressive decrease in hostility followed. In a related study, postpartum women who had high prolactin levels were significantly more hostile than a control group and equally as hostile as hyperprolactinemic women. Testosterone has also been linked to hostility. Scaramella and Brown found that testosterone correlated with aggressive behavior. Connor found that male prison inmates with the highest levels of testosterone had the earliest age of first arrest. However, testosterone levels have also been found to be subject to environmental influences. When a monkey was introduced into a cage where rival males had established dominance, Connor noted that the newcomer exhibited a rapid drop of plasma testosterone. On the other hand, when a male subject was placed in a cage of females in heat, testosterone levels rose sharply. Norepinephrine has long been implicated in the anger picture. Friedman and others reported that aggressive, hostile individuals were found to excrete more norepinephrine than the passive and anxious subjects to whom they were compared. However, this research suffers from the chicken-egg problem. It is unclear whether the secretion of norepinephrine is a product of anger or whether the subjects were angrier because they had higher levels of norepinephrine in their system. There is no question that hormones are associated with emotion, but although physiological arousal may be a necessary component of any emotional response, it usually cannot, by itself, make you angry. Your cognitive awareness and interpretation of an emotion-provoking event or situation is a second, equally important component. The work of Stanley Schachter best demonstrated the importance of the cognitive point of view. Building on the research of Marinin, Schachter proposed a two-factor theory of emotion. According to his theory, the labeling or attribution of an emotion is based on physiological change plus a cognitive interpretation of that change. In a classic series of experiments exploring this point of view, subjects received what they thought to be vitamin injections. Actually, the injections were adrenaline. One group of subjects was told that the vitamin would produce certain side effects, such as heart palpitations and tremor, which are real side effects of adrenaline. Other groups were led to expect no side effects or ones not usually associated with adrenaline. While waiting for a vision test, each subject sat in a room with another person who was actually a confederate of the experimenters. In some cases, the stooge appeared euphoric and silly, throwing paper airplanes, laughing, and playing with a hula hoop. In other cases, the stooge acted annoyed and angry, finally tearing up a questionnaire he was supposed to fill out. The purpose of the study was to see whether subjects under these different experimental conditions would assign different emotional labels to the physiological sensations produced by the adrenaline. The major finding was that subjects who did not expect the arousal produced by adrenaline, and thus had no way of explaining the physiological changes they were experiencing, tended to use the emotion displayed by the confederate as a label of their own feelings. They too expressed euphoria or anger, depending on the model provided them by the stooge. In contrast, subjects who were told to expect side effects were less likely to share the confederate's feelings. Many of the experiments have lent support to the notion that cognitions tend to override the effects of sheer arousal. Anger authority Ray Rosenman concluded that it is primarily the perception of an event that determines the emotional response and hence the psychophysiological consequences. Anger is a cognitive response that is associated with personal appraisal and interpretation. Carol Tavris, author of the seminal book, Anger, the Misunderstood Emotion, agrees that hormonally induced arousal is not enough to cause emotion. It needs a psychological component before heat is transformed into hostility, uncertainty into fear, general distress into depression or rage. Adrenaline does not become the anger hormone until it is attached to a provocation, perception of injustice, or some interpretation of events. Anger and the limbic system. The area of the brain that neurologists believe governs violent behavior is the limbic system. This system is located in the oldest part of the brain and includes, among other components, the amygdala and the hypothalamus. The amygdala, in particular, has been fingered as a major culprit in aggressive behavior. Elliott has suggested that brain diseases affecting the limbic system may result in something called the discontrol syndrome. He believes that this syndrome is an important cause of wife and child battery, senseless assaults, motiveless homicides, self-injury, dangerously aggressive driving, domestic infelicity, divorce, and so on. Vivid case histories of the discontrol syndrome have been cited that involve brutality of all kinds, sexual assault, and recklessness. The syndrome also appears to be implicated in the tragic case of Charles Whitman, the Texas Tower murderer of 17 people. After his death, an autopsy revealed a tumor the size of a walnut located in his amygdala. Although the limbic system, and particularly the amygdala, is identified with aggression, Rosenman points out that the relationship is not a straightforward one. The amygdala's existence does not necessarily mean that the brain is programmed instinctively for aggression. Thus, its stimulation in animals does not elicit aggressive behaviors unless they were previously learned. Moreover, its stimulation in human subjects variously causes anxiety, depression, anger, fright, and horror. Other researchers agree. Deskner points out that the amygdala evaluates incoming stimuli for their life-threatening or life-enhancing potential. These primitive good-bad evaluations seem to control access to the anger programs in the hypothalamus. Fortunately, Incoming stimuli must first be received and interpreted by the appropriate areas in the cerebral hemispheres specialized to handle sights, sounds, and so on. Therefore, the amygdala passes.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?